Welcome back. Chapter 31. Vic sat alone at a table on the upstairs deck of Buckets at the beach, listening to a blues band. Funny how blues had caught on with the white boys. These dudes' music sound pretty darn good to his ears. He needed something soothing. His own wife always had something to do, either something for her transcription service or for her damn friends. She hardly ever cooked anymore, except for one steak meal she made early in the week. Every other dinner they had came from either the supermarket deli or a restaurant takeout. Vic glanced around at the women in attendance. Jacksonville and its beaches were crawling with single, unattached women, but none of them were here tonight. The women here were all young and white. Too bad. His male ego was crying out for some feminine attention, but he never felt the urge to go that route. Maybe he should have held on to the phone numbers of the women he dated in between his marriages. Marriages? In between them? But it had been too long, and he was sure none of them were still available. Too bad. The terms of their relationship had been perfect for him. Dinner, movie, and then back to their place for sex. He might have been able to convince one of them to skip the dinner or the movie and hit the sheets for old time's sakes. He wouldn't mind a little meaningless sex right about now, as long as his partner was someone other than Norrell. Oh my gosh. Whew. She had turned their marital relations into something meaningless. At this point, he'd had it with her company, her friends, and her drinking. He tried to give her everything, but all she could do was bemoan the fact that she couldn't get pregnant. Plenty of other joys in life existed besides having babies. The funny thing was that if, by some miracle, Norrell did get pregnant, she'd probably complain about having to get up in the middle of the night to tend to a bawling baby. The grass was always greener. After an hour and 3 beers, he began to get bored. He decided to go check on the rental condominium he owned. The last vacationers who rented it had just returned home 2 days ago, and then just go home. Unless he decided to hang around the condo and listen to some music. Hell, maybe he even spent the night there just to get Norrell worrying. If she thought she might lose him, maybe she'd get her ass in gear and stop working so much. The band finished a number and the crowd applauded wildly. Vic was surprised at how rowdy they become. It had to be the alcohol. He leaned forward a little so he could scan the crowd without straining his neck muscles. A brown face jumped out at him, and not just any old face. She looked like that woman he had dinner with at the landing a couple of weeks ago. What was her name? Damn, he couldn't remember. Wait a minute, didn't it sound something like a tire? She sat at the rear table with 2 young white women, whom he surmised was friends from work. Judging from her expression, she felt as bored as he did. Vic quickly signaled a waitress. I want you to deliver a drink to the young lady at the table back there. She's African American, has light colored hair, and is wearing a tan blouse, he instructed. Right away, sir. The waitress, a blonde in her mid-20s, immediately approached Mitchie's table. The gentleman sitting ahead would like to buy you a drink, miss. Mitchie craned her neck to see through the table separating them. She only saw the back of her head, but the gray in it, the way it was cut, told her it had to be that old guy, Vic, from the landing. She wondered if his wife had stood him up again. Thank you. I'll have another green apple martini, but you can deliver it to his table. She picked up her purse. What perfect timing. She had just been about to ditch this joint anyway. The music wasn't bad, but the company left much to be desired. She only came out in the first place because she didn't want to be home. She knew Errol would call, and with a man you never knew when he might drive past your apartment and look for your car. so it wasn't enough to merely turn off or ignore the phone. She wanted Errol to realize that she had a life outside of the time they spent together. If she looked boring and predictable to him, he'd lose interest. She had to be elusive, especially after holding on to him this long. He invited her to have dinner with his parents on Sunday, so she had to be doing something right. "Excuse me, girls," she said to her companions. "I see an acquaintance of mine. I'm going to go and have a drink with him. I'll be back in a bit." She had no intentions of rejoining them, but she felt it sounded nicer to say she would. She ignored the admiring glances she received from most of the men she passed, all of whom were white, and most of whom were there with dates. "Hi," she said as she sat down next to Vic. "Fancy meeting you here." "Hi, it's funny. I just happened to turn around and there you were. I don't know how I missed you when I came in." Sometimes, if you're not expecting to see someone you don't really notice, they're there. "How have you been?" "Mitchie." Silently reciting all the brand names of tires he could think of had suddenly restored her name to his memory. "Perfect. Pretty good, Vic. How about you? Don't tell me your wife stood you up again." "Might as well find out the deal from the jump," she reasoned. He chuckled. "No, actually, she's entertaining a group of her friends. They're going to tie one on, and I just didn't feel like being around a bunch of cackling, slightly intoxicated females." "Oh, I see." Mitchie supposed a bunch of women over 45 getting drunk and loud wouldn't be a pretty sight. They sat back in their chairs, temporarily foregoing conversation in favor of the music. The waiter delivered Mitchie's drink, and Vic raised his beer glass in a silent toast. After two more numbers, the band announced they were taking a break. "They're really good," Mitchie remarked when they left the bandstand. But when the girls said they were going to see a blues band, I thought they would be more black people here. "Blues is big here at the beach. The white folks love it. I'm not sure why they don't have more black clientele. Maybe people don't realize they're out here." "Maybe. It's too bad." Vic glanced at the two women Mitchie had been sitting with, who had now been joined by a man. "I hope I didn't interfere with your evening." "No, not at all. We just met out here after work and had dinner." "Didn't you say at dinner last time that you lived off of Touchton Road? You're kind of far from home, aren't you?" "Not that far. I like it. At one point I considered moving out here, but I decided it would be more convenient to live closer to town. Plus, I can't really afford hurricane insurance. Just because there hasn't been a major storm since '64 doesn't mean one won't hit soon." "Yeah, I remember that. Hurricane Dora, she tore up the beaches." "You remember that? It's been more than 40 years. He smiled at her. "You're being kind, but yes, I remember. Of course, I was just a kid at the time, but I remember a lot of things from that era. Hell, I remember when you and I couldn't be served in a restaurant like this. There were whites-only signs everywhere." Wow. I'll never forget it. Sometimes I'm amazed that I still live here, but then things began to change and this city got a lot friendlier. Even if a lot of white folks did rush to get their houses on the market when the first black family moved into their neighborhoods. "It looks like you've done pretty well here." "I haven't done too badly, I guess." He drained his beer. "I was about to take a ride over to my condo and check it out. Since my house is full of my wife's friends, this seems like a good time to do it." "What's that, a second home?" "Rental property on First Street. It's not rented this week. Even though I have a management service that arranges for cleaning after each guest leaves and takes inventory and reports damages, I still like to check on it after they've been through it." He noticed the sparkle in her eyes and knew she was thinking she had struck pay dirt, that she found a man who had a few dollars to spend on her. "Want to come along? You can follow me in your car." "Yes, I'd like that. I'll just take a few minutes to finish my drink." Take your time. No, that wouldn't do. He wanted to leave first so he could stop at a convenience store and get some condoms in case she could be easily convinced to give him some. Vic. Well, this is insight on how some people think. Maybe I should leave now just to make it look a little better since you know people here. Good point. I don't believe in letting my coworkers know my business. He scribbled the address on a piece of paper and handed it to her. Finish your drink, wait 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll see you in a bit. All right, Vic. Mitchie's foot began to tap with a spring that hadn't been there before. So Vic owned property on First Street. She knew enough about Beach's geography to know that was just a block from the beach. Vic might be the perfect man to suit her needs. She still saw Sean fairly regularly, but that relationship had long since lost its luster. He become such a cheapskate since he got his own place. All he wanted to do was come over with some KFC or cheap Chinese food and then get her in a sack. Errol Trent continued to try to get into her bed, but she demurely refused, saying she didn't believe in premarital sex. The poor slug had no idea of what went on between her and Sean. Mitchie often satisfied her sexual appetite with the men she had no interest in marrying, while putting off the ones who pursued her. Married men were particularly useful for this purpose due to their off-hours availability. The fact that they often felt compelled to buy her gifts to soothe the disappointment they mistakenly believed she experienced when they couldn't be with her was an extra benefit. And the more money they had, the nicer the gifts. Vic certainly had a few bucks. He appeared older than any of the men she had affairs with, but he looked like he not only had it, but knew how to use it to prime advantage. She was about to find out. The ground floor one-bedroom condo smelled fresh and clean. The pine wood furnishings with their natural dark stains successfully struck a balance between homey and impersonal. After Vic showed it to her, they returned to the living room and listened to smooth jazz on the radio. He had a little difficulty pinpointing the station and turned away from her while he adjusted the radio dial. Mitchie took that opportunity to stretch out seductively on the floor pillows. So tell me, Vic, she asked when he turned to her, have you ever cheated on your wife? Vic was on the verge of a monster orgasm, his third of the evening. He gripped Mitchie's hips and pumped like crazy. Gosh, she felt good. She actually reminded him a lot of Norrell in the good old days before she became a business owner. He cried out when he felt the beginning of his climax, as she met him with a shout. Afterwards, they collapsed on the bed. My God, you're going to give me a heart attack, he said between gasps. If I do, you better hope you die. Your wife will never forgive you if she finds out what you were doing. He laughed. You got that right. It's getting late. I should be getting home. I'll be happy to drive you if you're tired. She gave him a Mona Lisa smile. And how will I get my car back? I can bring you to get it after you had a chance to rest. She was still smiling and he knew why. I know what you're thinking. You think that if I knew where you lived, I'd become a pest and start showing up at your door every 5 minutes. But I'm not. I'm not in the habit of doing this, Mitchie. It was true, at least partially. He had cheated regularly on Phyllis after she put on the first 40 pounds. But this was the first time he had stepped out on Norrell. It had been strictly for his ego. It really didn't mean anything. He just gotten fed up with feeling like he ranked last on her list of priorities. I appreciate that. I can drive myself though. Oh, what's wrong? I feel something. She sat up, her fingers disappearing between her legs. It's the condom. Oh my gosh. It must have unraveled. Oh no. Vic sat up. After a quick glance downward, he said, I didn't even realize it was gone. Can I help you get it out? No, I've got it. Mitchie removed the condom, which had actually torn. Oh, oh! This had never happened to her before. She felt a sudden sense of urgency. She better get home quickly so she could douche. I'm sure it'll be all right. I am sorry about that, though. He forgotten how refreshing sex was when there was no agenda. Even after the unfavorable result of her fertility workup, Norelle, when she wasn't drunk, that was, still put her legs up with her feet against the wall or bent her body in a favor of her tilted uterus, trying to give Mother Nature a helping hand. Mitchie got into her clothes. It was nice, Vic, but I've got to go. Wait, I'll walk you to your car. Not necessary. I'll park right outside. She wasn't messing around, he thought. Probably just as well. He couldn't go outside naked, and he really preferred taking a shower before he went home, so Norelle wouldn't pick up on the scent of another woman on him. He would come back tomorrow and toss the bed linen in the washer, and he knew where she worked if he wanted to contact her for another go-round in case things stayed bad between him and Norelle. Mitchie gave him an impersonal peck on the lips. Good night, Vic. I enjoy you. I enjoyed it. He watched her run to the door. He didn't even know Mitchie's last name, but one thing he did know, she was a cheating man's dream woman. And that's the end of chapter 1. Oh, child. The condom broke. And Vic cheated on Norelle. It's a pattern because he said he cheated on Phyllis. But, OMG, the two common denominators is, no, 3. First of all, he cheated with Mitchie, Cece's sister, who Norelle is envious because Cece keep having babies. And Vic just slept with Mitchie and the condom broke. And if Mitchie get pregnant, ooh, Norelle is bound to flip her wig because ain't no way she's gonna be able to deal with that. No way. So I guess this chapter done got me, so I'm gonna have to see y'all in chapter 32. See ya.